Hi folks, I'm Alan Watt, and this is Cutting Through the Matrix. Telling you boring stuff, which is boring to me because everything that I talk about I could predict. Not because I'm looking at a glass ball somewhere or reading cards like a card shark. I just read the agendas by the big foundations, and that's all you have to follow. You read their agendas, you see who belongs to these foundations. You'll see every major politician that's ever existed is a member of pretty well at least half a dozen each. And they're all interconnected, and they're on board towards one agenda. They smell the wind and which way it's blowing, and being politically correct and good psychopaths, they know to toe the line, as the Masons say. And as I say, this is an article here I'm going to read now that was in Google News just a few hours ago. London, world leaders must meet to agree to a new Bretton Woods system, Prime Minister Gordon Brown said on Monday, referring to the global financial architecture established at the end of World War II. Speaking as the government announced its latest move to try to stabilize the creaking banking system, Brown said the current crisis should be seen as an opportunity. You always hear them saying this. It's an opportunity. They see all these things as opportunities to push through delayed reforms. I think it was Gary Hart mentioned to the CFR right after 9/11 happened that we should see this disaster as an opportunity to push forth what Mr. Bush Sr. said are called a new world order. They always use these terms, you see. Sometimes it takes a crisis for people to agree that what is obvious and should have been done years ago can no longer be postponed, he said in a major speech on the fast-moving world financial crisis. We must create a new international financial architecture, there's your terms again, for the global age, adding, we must have a new Bretton Woods building a new international financial architecture for the years ahead. Well, guess who's been put on the tab to pay off all of these debts as they bail out the banks and write off their debts? Well, generations and generations and generations to come. In other words, perpetual slavery. This is what they've been after forever, coupled with, as I say, the whole greening agenda, the carbon footprint agenda, the global warming agenda, and all the other agendas to give you an utterly restricted, planned society. Family planning, now it's global family planning, and it's going to be mandatory shortly. It says here the Bretton Woods system was agreed at the end of World War II, set in place the world's financial architecture. And then it says, while the founders of Bretton Woods devised rules for a world of limited capital flows, we must devise new rules for a world of global capital flows. You know, Britain was complaining when Iceland went under with its banking system, because a lot of these big foundations had their money sunk in a bank there that promised them the highest returns. And it was odd, too, that many of the townships in Britain had money invested as well. The public probably didn't even know that. There's always two sets of books, you see. But here's the deal, look, that's come out of that Britain is going to buy those banks and make good on all the loans. So the taxpayer of Britain is going to bail out the bankers. So is that all those big shysters who invested there will get all their money. Isn't that a great deal, eh? Wonderful. But we cannot call that corruption. No. Corruption only happens at the bottom level amongst those people who breed indiscriminately, apparently. All the little people. White-collar crime. You see, it's no crime. It's no crime to wear a business suit and a suit and tie and to go to big meetings and be called respectable. It's no crime when you do these things because you simply change the laws so that it's not a crime. That's what they do. In fact, generally they change the laws before they commit the crime. Why not when you've got the power to do that? That's not bad at all, is it? I think white-collar crime is way, way bigger than any drug problem on the streets, the people selling little tokes of dope. But they always get away with it at the top because they're respectable, and we're trained to see them that way. Tragic situations we live in. It's tragic because the public have been given an alternate reality, a scientifically designed indoctrinated reality, which bears very little resemblance to the real one, the real parallel reality that coexists, the reality that's talked about between peer groups on upper levels. They discuss the population problem, as they generally call it, as they discuss the banking problems and the credit problems and debt problems. Margaret Thatcher, and I've talked about this a few times, mentioned this parallel government. So did Professor Carol Quigley, who was the historian for the American branch, the Council on Foreign Relations. And they both called it a parallel government. Quigley said that it had already existed for 60 years, running America and Canada. And he wrote his book in the 1960s. They make the real decisions, the real deals, and we get nothing but trivia and nonsense by the media. The media is owned by them too, of course. Most members of the Council on Foreign Relations, or at least most newspaper men, magnates, and so on, are members of this organization. In fact, it's pretty well mandatory. You couldn't be independent and get up there at that level without being a member, because information is power, knowledge is power. And you can keep people very ignorant if you give them the fake lower reality, where you tell them there's no nation. It's funny how we were international and global before 9/11 happened. We heard the mantra everywhere. And suddenly 9/11 happens, and presidents and prime ministers go back to nationals. We're all a nation, you know. We have to go off and fight to defend the nation. And now that that's been going on for years, we're back to global again. And the public don't notice the difference. 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, 2 legs good, 4 legs bad, as Orwell said in Animal Farm. Total indoctrination, scientific indoctrination, and utter trivia. And even amongst all the trivia, there's indoctrination. Even in comedies, there's indoctrination. You can't turn on a TV set in any talk show without the same mantras of, well, families are no use anyway, who needs them anymore, etc. Everything is indoctrination along the same lines. Quite fascinating. But the public don't know, because that's all they've ever known, is that television and the teats that they suck on, which they enjoy. And they enjoy it because they come home from work in their artificial environments full of stress, and they want to zonk out. And they do. They go off into an alpha state and get totally brainwashed. Look at their jaws drop open after they've eaten, as they sit in front of that blearing piece of plastic and glass. Total indoctrination. Skinner said, if you want to alter people, you alter something in their environment, put something there that wasn't there before, and we alter accordingly. The definition for technology is something introduced into society which alters the people's reality. Quite something. But I'll put all these links up on my site after the end of the show. And believe you me, this new economic order means we're all in it together. That old mantra you'll see in Brazil, the comedy, showing us through comedy form what was coming. We're all in it together. Posters and speeches everywhere will have that in it. We're interdependent, you see. Interdependent. And that's one of the reasons they have to create the private armies, because they discussed this in the Council on Foreign Relations years ago. They said it'd be very hard to create a nationalistic fervor amongst the troops if they're international for a global society, so that they find a new way of indoctrination, and they do it very well when you have private recruits. You can create a very special brotherhood of mercenaries who will do whatever they're told to do. And everything now is public, private. The public pay for it. The private companies reap the benefits and the profits. Same with the roads and everything else. We build them through taxpayers' money, give them over for peanuts to the big boys' friends, all prearranged, of course, and then we pay for the maintenance of the roads, as we pay also for the toll taxes and all the rest of it. Pure profit all the way. But it's not corruption. No, it's all quite legal. They make laws to make it legal.